Welcome to the Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. My name is Frank. I'm the host of the show. On this podcast, I discuss and review movies new and old. You can listen to this show wherever you get your podcasts. I ask if you do listen, if you can rate and review. That'll help raise the show's profile in the algorithm. So if people are looking for a new movie podcast, you can also watch the podcast on the following video channels. It is available on X, Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook under the Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. So if you do watch the show, I would ask that you like the page, and especially on YouTube, if you like and subscribe, you'll get notifications when the show goes live as well. Also, as part of the plan for the podcast this year, I really want to grow the audience. So if you listen or watch, please, if you can rate and review on whatever platform you listen to or watch the show, I would really appreciate it. And the last thing I would ask is if you are able to financially support the show. If you're watching it, you see this QR code right here up on the left. You can click on that, or you can go to my X page, which is at Bend Your Ear Pod, and there's a tip jar there. That'll help defray the cost of producing the show. So on this episode, I'm going to be discussing and reviewing My Cousin Vinny, directed by Jonathan Lynn, which came out in 1992. Starring Joe Pesci. So, of course, at this point in Joe Pesci's career, this was probably at the zenith of his popularity. Obviously, coming off the heels of Goodfellas and Home Alone, his star was not any higher probably than at this point, with the Academy Award win for Goodfellas and the incredible commercial success of Home Alone. Obviously, he had been acting since the late 70s. Obviously, he was in Raging Bull, 1980s film with Scorsese and De Niro, who he's worked with frequently, obviously with Casino and The Irishman. So he's worked with De Niro and with Scorsese quite a bit. And then, of course, like I said, the success of Home Alone. And he was also in Lethal Weapon 2, the real successful sequel to the hit 1987 action film directed by Richard Donner. So in My Cousin Vinny, it is a legal comedy. The screenplay was written by Dale Launer, who wrote some very funny screenplays. He also wrote Ruthless People, which is a very good movie from the 80s, and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels with Michael Caine and Steve Martin, that I will most definitely review for this podcast, because that, spoiler alert, that film is hilariously funny. And Jonathan Lynn is the director. He is known as a comedy director. Another film that he's directed that came out in the 90s as well was Distinguished Gentleman, starring Eddie Murphy, which hardcore Eddie Murphy fans may know. It's a I believe an underrated gem. Did not do well financially at all, but I thought it was a pretty funny movie set in Washington. So at the opening of My Cousin Vinny, the film opens with two guys driving through the South. Bill Gambini and Stanley Rothenstein, played by Gambini, played by Ralph Macchio of Karate Kid fame, and Stanley, his friend, who's played by Mitchell Whitfield. So they are in, like I said, driving in Alabama. They stop to get some food. They go to like a gas station, convenience store type place, pick up some food and head back out on the road. As they're driving, after leaving the convenience store, Bill realizes that he has a can of tuna in his pocket that he inadvertently didn't pay for. So he's like, so they start joking about, we're in Alabama. If we get arrested, it's going to be the death penalty. So making quacking jokes. So immediately, as they say that, they get pulled over by a police officer and taken to the station. So they are interrogated, and the interrogation is them basically asking Will and Stanley, hey, did you do this? Why did you do this? So, of course, them thinking that it's about the tuna, they're honest. They're like, yeah, hey, look, misunderstanding. I didn't mean to take this. Of course I did it. It wasn't, it was an accident, being honest and saying that they did it. So, of course, we find out in the course of the interrogation that they're actually interrogating them not about shoplifting, but that the shopkeeper that they had just seen was murdered. So, of course, they realize this and they're like, wait, what? So, they are arrested and are allowed their phone calls. So Stanley has no access to his parents. Her parents are out of the country. So obviously, remember, this is pre-internet, pre-cell phone. You really can't get a hold of anybody if they're unavailable. So Bill's trying to think of who he can call and ends up reaching out to his cousin, Vinny, who is an attorney. So Vinny drives down to Alabama with his fiancee, Mona Lisa DeVito, played by Marissa Tomei, who of course won an Academy Award for her performance, and we'll get into the performances a little bit later. So, of course, Vinny comes down to assist, and it's obvious he has no experience in the realm of criminal law or defending criminal defendants, or obviously working a murder case. And in a very actually humorous scene after the preliminary hearing takes place, Bill and Stanley are talking to Vinny, and Vinny, they're basically uncovering his lack of experience. And then you find out, in a great question, Bill asks Vinny, goes, wait a minute, how much experience do you have? You graduated law school 10 years ago. So, of course, Vinny lets them know that that is true, but that it took him 6 tries to pass the bar. So that's what he had been doing in the intervening years, attempting to pass the bar and failing repeatedly, and then finally passing the bar. So, of course, Bill and Stanley are concerned. Stanley is super concerned. And as they move forward into the preliminary hearing phase and setting the trial date, Vinny is having issues with Judge Haller, played by Fred Gwynne. So if you know Fred Gwynne, he is most known for the 1960s comedy, The Munsters. He was Herman Munster. And I know his career had gone up and down about that. And it was fun. It was at this time, a couple of years before My Cousin Vinny, Fred Gwynne was in Pet Sematary. So if you're a horror film fan, Pet Sematary was the movie version of the Stephen King book that came out, I think, in 1989, directed by Mary Lambert, which has developed quite a cult following. I've seen Pet Sematary. It's been a long time. It was a pretty decent movie. I love the book because I read Stephen King at the time in the 80s. All I did was read Stephen King. So I was a big fan of that book. And the movie was decent, and he was very good in it. So I was kind of a reintroduction to movie fans of Fred Gwynne. And then he got to be in this film and does a great job as Judge Haller. So Judge Haller is a by-the-book guy. In the first meeting with Vinny, he gives him this huge, thick book of Alabama civil procedure and how he wants his courtroom run, and that they follow that book to the letter. So, of course, Vinny is struggling early on, 1, with lack of knowledge, and 2, with a clash with Judge Haller. So that is where some of the funny lines come in. If you've seen the movie, the famous Utes comment, 2 Utes, and just a bunch of funny stuff. His wardrobe, his demeanor, just kind of the procedure of the courtroom. So that brings some of the early laughs in the movie. Now, the first hour of the movie is really a fish out of water comedy. So as he's trying to prep for the trial, having his entanglements with the judge, having arguments with his fiance because she's wanting to get married. He made a promise to her that after he won his first case that they would get married. Of course, he hasn't tried a case yet. This is his first case. And then, of course, the concerns of the fact that they're defending his cousin and his friend on a first-degree murder charge. Now, if you're looking for a legal documentary, it was kind of funny when I was talking about Gladiator not being a documentary. My Cousin Vinny's not a documentary. So the things that kind of made me laugh as I was watching it a second time is kind of the things they have to do for time. So the events of this movie take place, I think, probably within a couple of weeks. I don't even think it's 2 weeks time in the movie that goes by. So the fact that they're accused of first-degree murder, charged of first-degree murder, and the sentence can be the death sentence. So they have some jokes about people being executed there. I mean, I know you have a right to a speedy trial, but this takes it to another level. I don't think a trial anywhere in the country, even in Alabama, would be that speedy for a first-degree murder charge. So that's kind of funny, not realistic. But again, this is not a documentary. So again, as he's prepping for the trial, trying to adjust to being there, trying to adjust to being a criminal lawyer, it becomes a fish out of water comedy for the first hour. And the thing that's strong about My Cousin Vinny is it's not laugh out loud funny in the like a Dumb and Dumber. It takes its time getting you invested in the characters. Now, the only characters that you really don't get invested in are the 2 people that are charged with murder. Ironically, there's not really much for Macchio and them to do other than to be like worried. So those characters really aren't, really probed into, and I'll give one exception. There's one really good scene where Stanley is going to engage the public defender. Now, the public defender is played by Austin Pendleton, and he's very funny as well. When he goes on, what happens is early on, Vinny and the public defender defends Stanley, Vinny defends Bill. But there's a great scene where Macchio is discussing with Stanley to try to convince him to go with Vinny, and he tells a very funny story about how Vinny. Well, there was a party that they were at, a family party, and there was a magician, and every trick the magician did, Vinny would point out what he was doing. Like he would quickly analyze the trick. And Bill is telling the story to Stanley to let him know, look, I know he doesn't have an experience. I'm concerned too. But what I do know is he has an ability to analyze a situation and get to the bottom of something very quickly. So it was a very good scene, and it was the one time he got into kind of Bill's character a little bit and Bill's relationship with Vinny, even though Vinny's kind of like a distant cousin, but still family, so he knows him. So that was actually a very good scene to kind of get in depth into that character. So as we get close to the trial, the trial starts. You have the district attorney of the city, played by the great actor Lane Smith. So he's Jim Trotter, and he is the prosecutor. And the sheriff Farley, is played by another great character actor, Bruce McGill. So they're both in it, and of course they're always great. That goes without saying. Does a good job. So obviously, as the trial begins, it's pretty solid evidence that these two probably did it. But the kicker is, and like you see in a lot of legal procedurals, a lot of the evidence presented is circumstantial, but it's kind of tough to overcome. They were there. The vehicle they were driving was identified. There were shots heard right after they left. So it's pretty tough. Circumstantial because there's no murder weapon. And like I said, everything is witness testimony, and motive is not there either. So as the trial progresses, Vinny starts to find his way. And then the second half of the movie is a courtroom drama, or dramedy, for lack of a better term. So he's defending his clients. He's making good points. And this is where the movie kicks into high gear and when it's at its best. Like I said, the first hour is very good as well, because I think, Jonathan Lynn's style is to go into character development deeper, which is why this film is 2 hours. So I think most comedies, move quickly, hour 30 minutes, hour 40 minutes. And it could be a concern when it's hitting the 2 hour mark as a comedy. But in My Cousin Vinny's case, it's not an issue, because the acting is great all around. Again, Joe Pesci is always fantastic. Marissa Tomei is great, Oscar winning performance. So that elevates the material, where in lesser actors' hands, and maybe the movie could have dragged early on before it gets to the trial. And again, once it gets to the trial, it really kicks into high gear. And the way the trial unfolds is actually very well done. It unfolds like a legal drama, as you're trying to figure out if Vinny can successfully defend them and get them off of these charges. So it's fun. It's a fun movie to watch. And like I said, I hadn't watched it in a very long time. So the good thing about not watching a movie in a long time is when you watch it again, you get kind of a fresh look at it, because this is not a movie I've seen, multiple times. I think I've maybe seen it once, maybe twice. So it's always great to watch a movie you haven't seen in a long time that you enjoy, because you get things that you forgot, little things that you were like, yeah, that's right. That's why this movie was really, really good. And on the good front, this was a fantastic movie to rewatch, and it's very entertaining. It's very funny. And like you said, you kind of you get involved into how he's going to actually get them off, because it looks bad. So it's great to see him navigate that all the way to the end of the film. And like I said, his battles with basically Vinny's battles with everybody, with his fiance, with his clients, with the judge. And actually, it's another funny scene in the legal part of it is Vinny's talking to his fiance, and he's like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna go hunting with the DA. I'm gonna charm this guy. He's gonna give me all. Maybe I can get all his files, and then I can see how he's planning his case." It's great. So we'll see. There's a scene. So he goes hunting with him, and the district attorney Trotter says, "Hey, of course, I'll give you all my information. I'll have my secretary type it all up and get it over to you. Don't worry about it. You got it." So he comes back to the hotel where they're staying out with his fiance, and he's all full of himself. He's telling Mona Lisa, he's like, "Hey, I did it. My charm worked." He gave me all the files in his case. He gave it all to me. So of course his fiance is looking at him like a dumbass, and he's like, "What? What's the problem?" So you find out that she has been looking through the CivPro book, reading the book, studying it, looking at it. So she tells him, "Hey, dummy, it's discovery. He's supposed to do that. he's required to do that or the case can be thrown out. So it's just a good way to see her deflate him and show what her value is, because all she wants to do through the movie is try to help him win and try to be there by his side. And then, of course, there's a famous part where she does end up helping in a big, big way. And like I said, if you've seen the movie, you know what that is. But for the few people that maybe haven't, I'll leave that for you to watch it when you see the film. So again, very funny. The performances are really great. And it was a really enjoyable, fun movie to watch. And like I said, to watch Joe Pesci work is always great fun. So was there anything I didn't like? No, like I said, I gave you my, I don't even think it's a criticism, because I think it's just, it's about suspending disbelief. Obviously the speedy nature of first degree murder trial from preliminary to going to trial was great, was ridiculous. But again, that's not really a criticism, in the sense, like I said, this is not a legal documentary. So that's it. Other than that, I didn't really find anything wrong with it. Like I said, the pacing was good. Like I said, even though it clocks in at 2 hours, it doesn't feel long. You enjoy sitting in the first hour, learning about the characters, learning about the dynamics and the relationship between Vinny and Mona Lisa, and the interplay between him and the judge, and him and the sheriff, all fantastic, and him and the district attorney. So all of that stuff carries the film along until we get to the trial. And again, it's all very, very entertaining. So based on that, I'm going to give My Cousin Vinny 4 stars out of 5. So on that scale, it's a film I would watch again. I have watched it several times. I recommend it. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. If you're a fan of Pesci and Marissa Tomei, of course, if you have seen it, I would definitely take a rewatch of it. It's worth it. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it moves along briskly, and is very satisfying, and just an entertaining film. Because when I was picking another film after Gladiator 2, I wanted something that was a little lighter to review. And I was scrolling through. Actually, I saw this movie again on my unsolicited advertisement for Tubi. Tubi's fantastic because, again, you get a whole library of films, and you get them with commercial interruptions, but they're limited. But the biggest thing is the movies are uncut. So it's just as you see it in the movies with a couple of commercials thrown in. So definitely very watchable. And there's a great library of older films there. So again, just unsolicited for Tubi. So again, I'm going to give My Cousin Vinny 4 stars out of 5. It was fun to rewatch again. It was nice to revisit that movie. And again, I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it, or if you have, to definitely give it a rewatch. So I appreciate it again. Thank you for listening to the show. As I'm looking at the numbers, as I'm putting out more episodes, the downloads have increased, and I really appreciate that. Please continue that. As I stated, I'm going to continue to put out shows more frequently. I may actually be doing a second show today to be released in a few days. So like I said, I'm going to try to be more consistent on getting these shows out, and hopefully you continue to enjoy it, and hopefully we can increase these numbers again. That's a big goal for me in 2025, to increase the audience for this show. So any way you guys can help me do that, I appreciate it. And the biggest 2 ways are, and they cost nothing, is share my post on social media. You can also like and review the podcast on wherever you listen to the show, and just spread the word. So if you could do that, that all those things will help support the show. And again, if you can financially support it, again, QR code up here on the left if you're watching. Go to X on Twitter if you're listening to the show. You can go to the tip jar there. That'll help defray the cost of the show. And like I said, I want to continue to grow it in 2025. I continue to love doing this show. I continue to wish I can always record every single day if it was up to me. But I enjoy it very much. And again, one last thing before I wrap up, and I want to keep putting it out there and hoping somebody reaches out. If you want to be on the program, if you want me to interview you to discuss a movie or anything about movies, as I stated in the last few episodes, and I'll keep repeating the message, I want to try to do more interviews. The thing that's restricted me has been my availability to have people with me to do it. My schedule is crazy with 2 kids that are running around to school and other activities. This is why I do this show solo, because I can work around my own schedule and pop in and out, record at night, record in the morning, record in the daytime. And it's hard when I'm trying to schedule with somebody else, because like I said, I don't want them to be beholden to my schedule. I want to at least be open. But again, I'm going to try to make an aggressive effort to, at least from time to time, sprinkle in review. So if you're a friend of mine that listens to the show and you want to come on, if you just like the show and want to discuss movies with me, please reach out. You can reach out to me on X at BendYourEarPod, or you can email me directly, BendYourEarPodcast@gmail.com. I really want to try to have more frequent guests on the show to discuss movies. So please, please, please feel free to reach out. And if you do reach out to me, I will do my best to rearrange my schedule to make it easy for people that want to come on. So, because if you reach out to me and make that attempt, I want to try to at least to make it work somehow. If we can't, we can't, but I will make every effort to make it work where we can record. And I would only ask for no more than a half hour of your time. We'll make it succinct. We'll make it quick and get these episodes knocked out with people on, because it's fun discussing movies with other people. We can go longer. If we need to go longer than 30 minutes, we can do whatever you're available to do and I'm available to do. But at least I can promise you, if we want a quick in and out, we can do it 30 minutes or less. And I think we could have a great conversation resulting in a great podcast. So let me just put that out there as well. So again, to wrap up the show, My Cousin Vinny, I'm giving 4 stars out of 5. The movie was directed by Jonathan Lynn, written by Dale Launer, and starring Marissa Tomei and Joe Pesci. So again, 4 stars out of 5. And again, I want to thank everyone that's listened and watched the show. And I will be back very soon with another episode. Until then,